Hey YouTube, what's going on? This is Joakim, back again, now with an update for my graphic novel collection for the start of 2026. So behind me you can see my entire collection in its entirety. It's right now around 338 books in total, and that includes even the books that I see myself selling off in the future, maybe because another edition of it that collects more deluxe editions into one omnibus maybe comes out later, or something like that. And I see myself only keeping the books that I see myself reread in the future. And if I would hold on to every single book that I've ever read, even though I might not read it again or not, it would just take up too much space and too much time and effort. I have several more videos on that topic. And the bookshelves behind me, those are the Billy shelves with Augsburg doors attached to them. Also, they have an extender up above, so they take up this entire wall basically. And I go for the white bookshelves just because I feel that it makes the room look bigger overall, and it doesn't look as heavy as darker furniture might add to the space. And yeah, they've worked out so far for almost 10 years now. And it's a mix of both the wider Billy shelves and the slimmer ones. If I were to go back 10 years, I would go for the slimmer ones all the way, but on the wider shelves, I've stacked them full with omnibus, and I can say that I've never actually seen them sag in a terrible way that would alarm me for the book's safety. But I do keep most of my heavy books on the lower shelves just in case. Enough talk about that. Now let's go through this collection. Starting off, we have my library-sized editions or Image Deluxe editions and DC Absolutes. And first off, we have my one and only Rick Remender story of his independent work, that is Deadly Class. And though I can't take out volume 1, we can take a look at volume 2 here. And I don't remember if this is the variant or not. I just went with the covers that I could get at the time. And it is, in my opinion, one of his best series. I've read a lot of Rick Remender in the past, but this one has taken the spot of actually remaining in the collection. And then, as we said, we have the DC Absolutes. This previous year, I think I doubled my DC Absolute collection. And one that was my very first was the Batman Absolute Hush. It has been with me since the beginning. It was the first version of Hush that I collected. I've had several other collected editions in the past, but this one is the one that remains. This was a new addition to the collection, the Absolute Dark Knight by Frank Miller, or the Absolute Dark Knight Returns, that is. And it also collects Strikes Again, but it is not a story that I reread. It is just included there. And then we have Batman Year 1, classic, and finally have it in the absolute size edition, and with two formats, one with the original coloring from the single issue books, and then one with the coloring of the first trade paperback edition. And then we have Absolute Killing Joke, Alan Moore classic, of course, and Brian Boland. I bought that because 1, it's a classic, 2, it goes hand in hand with the Absolute Batman Free Jokers by Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok. And this is a story that I really, really like, actually. Mainly because of the artwork, but Jeff Johns, I think he did a decent job of it. It's all about how you see the Batman continuity, I guess. Then we have the Superman Batman Absolute Volume 1. It has a second volume in the Absolute format. I used to have that, but the stories in that one are just so slow, and they're not Public Enemies and Supergirl. Let me tell you that. No, with Michael Turner artwork, of course. Rest in peace. Always the good ones that goes first. And another new edition for the collection, Absolute Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. If there's any edition of Alex Ross's work you should have in the Absolute, I think this is the one. Second one to that would be Justice. And then we have another Absolute edition, one that has been with me for a very long time, the All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. It's not something that I reread too often and really should reread sometime soon. And then we have Absolute Watchmen. This was a great reread. I recently rewatched the Watchmen HBO series, which has its continuation from this graphic novel and not from the Scott Snyder live action movie. Then we have the Absolute Doomsday Clock. I think I missed mentioning or talking about this in last year's collection edition, but this one, I like it. I like anything that Jeff Johns writes, really. And yeah, very basic like that. And yeah, big bloody Superman symbol there, and on the other side. And of course, it goes hand in hand with the Absolute Watchmen. So just like the duality of Killing Joke and Free Jokers. And then we have some art books. I don't have too many art books, but these ones, just great. Jim Lee Icons, published by Titan Books. I don't think they'll ever reprint this one. I think DC has reprinted some of the things that are in this one. And it's just really nice. Dwelled into some of Jim Lee's work. Big fan, of course, of his art style, and try to emulate that whenever I was drawing myself. But man, no one can beat a legend, so just try to be yourself instead. The art of the Batman. This is just, it's the best Batman movie in my opinion. And with that, I wanted to dwell in and take in as much as possible that I could of this movie. So therefore I picked this one up just to know as much as I could what they wanted to do with this movie. Dual Arts by Kazuki Takahashi. Once again, rest in peace. What a way to go, being a hero, saving lives. And I mean, his artwork as well stands out. Pegasus. Really good. And they have a step-by-step on one of the artworks. I think it was Life of a Sky Dragon, and goes through a process on how he makes the card drawings and everything. Then we have the Marvel Art of series. And this first one is Alex Maleev. Of course, I picked this up because of his incredible work on Daredevil together with Brian Michael Bendis. And of course, we get to feature a lot of other drawings than just Daredevil within this collected editions. And it's just a really nice coffee table book to flip through. Not too many words or text or anything other than drawings, really. And it's nice to just have something to look at purely for the artwork. Another one edition that came out at the same time as the Alex Maleev book was the David Mack collected edition. And of course, we have Spider-Man here, forefront. Open up, see some Phoenix, Jessica Jones TV series interior. Yeah, just great work. That was a lot of time for a first shelf. let's see how quick it goes for the next one. Okay, so this actually might move quicker because on this shelf, as you can see, in its entirety is the Attack on Titan Colossal Edition collection, collecting volumes 1 to 7, and in its entirety, I think that is, let's see here, up until volume 34. So, this is, of course, the greatest anime and manga ever, in my opinion, and they are going to release this in a deluxe size edition that collects 3 volumes each. These all collects 5 volumes each, so it would take forever to recollect this, of course, in the deluxe editions, and it is a format that I like because it's hardcover, but I think that I'm actually gonna be sane about this decision and keep the colossal editions for the future. And then we go on, and here we have the first volume of Full Metal Alchemist in the hardcover editions, and then we go on to the next shelf. And here we continue with the Full Metal Alchemist hardcover editions. Each volume collects 1.5 of the original paperback volumes, so therefore 18 volumes in total. Just grabbing the final volume here. And I've never actually watched the first series or this Brotherhood, actually. I really should, but I still think that having read the manga is the best version that you can get of the series. It's my brother's favorite, and that's why I picked it up in the first place. Then we have the Death Note, the all-in-one edition. This huge type of Bible, almost, collecting all the 12 volumes of Death Note all in one thick edition. And I reread this maybe once every 5 years or so. So it's about time to reread soon. But I've seen the anime and live action movies and all of that stuff over and over again. So it kind of sticks. And yeah, you don't have to reread as often, but it is definitely something to go back to. And speaking of things to go back to, something that has been with me very long time, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Original manga series. This is the complete collection from volumes 1 to 38, collected in these 1 in 3 volumes, except the final volume. And it's an excellent series, and in difference to the anime series, this is a lot less censorship on it. You get more blood and gore and characters that doesn't necessarily survive in the manga series but do in the anime series. So yeah, you get a different experience, I think, with the manga series, and that's why I've kept that. And now let's go on to the second row, where we start with my Vertigo and Image titles. And here we have the start of the Vertigo and Image titles. And first to the left here, we have Fables with deluxe sized hardcovers, now completed with volume 16. I don't remember if I had volume 16 last time I made an update, but yeah. Instead of a Vertigo, we have the DC logo here now. So, but it is completed, and I don't think I'll ever sell this set off. It's great stories, and I get back to it almost like every 5 years also. I've reread it once at least. So maybe in a few years' time, whenever I get back into rereading my independent books again, we'll see what happens. We have Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire, volumes 1 to 3. And I always show this, but volumes 1 is autographed and a little drawing by Jeff Lemire there. Now that is definitely staying. Then we have Day Tripper by Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. I always cry whenever I read this book, so I try not to go back to this book as often, because I know for sure that I'll have a good cry after that. Then we have V for Vendetta, the 30th anniversary edition. This is something that I thought about upgrading to the Absolute Edition, but the 30th Anniversary Deluxe Edition makes it just fine, and something that I should both reread and rewatch the movie at some point. Been in the mood for that. And then we start off with our Image hardcover deluxe editions. First off is Big Hard Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. I really like the color design on the hardcovers themselves, or the dust jacket. And it's a comedy. With a name like that, it couldn't be anything else. And even if you take off the dust jacket, you have Down Boy. In case you don't want people to see the actual title of what you're reading. But when it comes to the comedy sort of titles, I mean, in the stories of Fables and Marvel and DC characters, I always find something new whenever I reread them. But whenever it's a comedy of sorts, I mean, it's the same. And some comedies you can rewatch forever or reread forever, but I don't feel the same when I know what to expect all the time. It's much better the first time when you don't expect it. And that's the same problem that I have with Shu here in the Omnivore edition. It's a great concept. I mean, whatever he eats, he sees the life of. If he eats an apple, he sees how the seed was planted, how the tree grew and everything, and how the apple fall and was picked and everything. The whole life cycle. Of course, they take advantage of this psychic power by having him eat corpses and stuff and body parts. But when you expect it after you've read it 3 times already, it's not the same magic. I don't know if it's just me, or I'll have to reread it once more just to be sure. And then we have East of West, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Of course, the complete set for the story by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragotta. And yeah, it's a really good series and should get back to it whenever I start rereading my independent comic books titles again. Let's keep on moving for more. And so here we continue on with more Image titles, actually the whole row. And here we have Lazarus, which was my favorite read of 2025, with this new 4th volume just came out last year, and it had been on a hiatus for 5 years since volume 3 came out and this one. So I'm expecting one final volume to complete this series, and it'll probably stay on my graphic novel shelves forever. Huh. That was not an intended joke. The main character name is Forever. Going on. Revival, the deluxe editions by Tim Seeley and Mike Norton. One of my favorite series, but much like the comedy in Chew and everything, the mystery of Revival, once you know it, sure, you can see things in a different perspective the second time, but now, having read it second and third time, I don't know. See if this can stand the test of time with another reread. I'm not just gonna sell off all of the things just because I have a hunch of it. It has to go through some kind of trial. Then we have Brian K. Vaughan's space opera Saga, and of course Fiona Staples on the artwork. Here's volume 1, volume 2, and of course volume 3. And now I am expecting volume 4. I have it pre-ordered, so that'll be 2/3, or what am I saying? Yeah, 2/3 into the completion of the series. 6 hardcovers would complete the series, as we were told that volume 3 ended halfway through the series. That'll be another 10 years probably before it's actually completed. But we'll have other things to read in the meantime. We have Image that bought or adopted, or however they achieved the IP for Transformers and G.I. Joe. So we have the first books from the Energon universe here, with Transformers Book 1 and Codename G.I. Joe Book 1 and 2. And I'm thinking about actually dropping following Codename G.I. Joe, but I'm still gonna pick up Transformers, that's for sure. And then I have one more title image on the next row. So on this final shelf row for the independent books, we have one more image title that is Robert Kirkman's Invincible in the compendium size format. Still a hardcover, so it feels like an omnibus, but it's still standard size, so the issues within it is still the same size as you would find it within a regular comic book. But it's good enough for me. They are releasing an omnibus version of it, but I would be crazy now when I finally have these to sell them off just to gain a little more panel height in each and every issue. So I'm definitely sticking with these. Then we move on to my Swedish titles. If I didn't mention, I'm from Sweden, and we also have our own independent titles, of course. Here's one, and that is Herman Hedning. It takes place in basically the beginning of everything. Lots of Adam and Eve jokes in the beginning of the series, and I mean, it's just the beginning of creation. I mean, both God and the devil takes roles within this one, but mainly it's just these round characters here that you get to follow along their adventures. And of course I have signatures from the creator on basically each and every book. Here's a sort of RoboCop of Herman. And yeah, he's a great guy. I meet him up at Comic-Con each and every time that I go. And yeah, great creator and a crazy person with all the stories that he's come up with. Then another crazy person and a genius is Tony Kronstam with Elvis, first book here that I have, Under the Shell, and lots and lots of titles. Monday Zombie, The Dance of Death. Here's one, Say Hello to My Little Friend, which also is signed. And this title had a hiatus for almost 10 years, but they finally came back with Elvis: A Second Chance. So new material is finally coming out, and that's always good to hear with our independent creators. Then I have one more creator. We have Kim W. Anderson. Here's the Love Hurts Deluxe Edition. Basically, a lot of horror elements or space adventures, different genres, but the main concept that binds them all together is, of course, the concept of love. And then we have a horror graphic novel called Elena, and he made a movie out of that one also, I believe. That is the cover of that book. And then we're moving on to our IDW titles. So here, as you can see, beginning of the third shelf row, we have almost the entire Teenage Mutants Ninja Turtles series published by IDW from volume 1 up to 17. Still waiting for volume 18 to ship out at this moment of this recording. And last but not least, we're going to have the bow that wraps it all up with The Last Ronin, which serves sort of like a Dark Knight Returns sort of tale. And then we start off with the Transformers by IDW and phase 1 with volumes 1 to 8. And I started rereading this title some months ago, and I went all the way up to volume 4, so I'll have to start with volume 5 whenever I have the time to get back to this. Right now it's the Spider-Man books that's on my to-read list and pile. And then we have volumes 1 out of phase 2 here with Optimus, and that is going to continue on the next shelf. And then, as you can see, we have this whole section jam-packed full with Transformers volumes, all the way up to volume 12 with Soundwave on the cover, and then phase 3 volume 1 starting off with Windblade on the cover, and it just moves on and on to the next shelf. Okay, so starting on this shelf, you can see we have the final volume of IDW's Transformers, phase 3 volume 3, and that's everything that they published. Maybe we won't see a complete collection of what IDW made, but I do hope so, because I would really like to read the finish and how Unicron and everything was introduced in the end. But we'll see. Then we have Lock and Key, the Key House Compendium. It's basically an omnibus, and it is something that I love to reread. I finish it in 2 days whenever I pick it up, and it's just great horror. I mean, it is Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, and I really like the concept with all the different keys, and that gives you different abilities depending on the key. It's just so simple, but so great. Then we have my one and only Terry Moore book, which is Rachel Rising. This was a book that everyone wanted at some point, and I'm just happy to have it. It's one of the few black and white titles that's not a manga book. And then I have from Wizard Entertainment, the Jim Lee edition. And this I got because, yeah, it's Jim Lee, and this keeps some of his much older work. I mean, sketches that you don't necessarily find within the Icons edition that I showed you earlier. So, yeah, and different stories and everything. Been a really long time since I reread this. And then, as you can see, yeah, we have a lot of shelf space for upcoming books, but I don't necessarily want to have books everywhere. It's good to have room to breathe and to have other stuff to display, like, yeah, this Batarang. It's metal and it's sharp almost. I wouldn't throw this, definitely not. It's almost a weapon. And yeah, I got it on my first Comic-Con that I visited here in Sweden. And then we have my girlfriend's Lego house from Pixar's Up. And with that, we now move into the Marvel books. So here's the beginning of the Marvel shelf. And yeah, we have Batman standing on that shelf. But he didn't fit anywhere else. This is yet another Jim Lee sort of memorabilia with a signed art print, so it's a printed signature. And yeah, the Blue Line action figure. This has been with me for some time. Oh my god, 2015. This has been with me for 10 years now. Man. I'll move that out of the way for this time. And we also have my little Spider-Man bookends that I really like, because I think they're one of a kind, actually. I haven't seen any of those anywhere else, but yeah, I like them. Remind me of The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield the most. And then we have, to our left, we have the deluxe editions and some paperbacks from Spider-Man and other Marvel series. We have the Avengers Rage of Ultron, the original graphic novel by Rick Remender. So I actually do have another Rick Remender book, but it's not one of his independent titles. And then The Amazing Spider-Man Family Business by Mark Waid. And this was an original graphic novel, so not necessarily in continuity. But then Chip Zdarsky came in, and it's sort of canon now, I believe. And then we have Daredevil, End of Days, the final Daredevil story. Uh, Not really Dark Knight Returns kind of story, but I mean, it could be your final Daredevil story, however you read it. And then we have Secret Wars by Jonathan Hickman. Of course, gonna reread this whenever I get to reread the Fantastic Four or the Avengers by Hickman. And then we have Vision. This is, of course, one of the inspirations for WandaVision. I mean, in this one, Vision is trying to establish a home suburban life. And of course, with wanting to have a normal life, there's trouble ahead as a superhero. Then we start off with the Dan Slott Amazing Spider-Man Deluxe editions. So there's so many. I mean, this is volume 1 and 2 out of the first renumbering of a series. And then it renumbered again with Spider-Man Worldwide. I really like that one, actually. Then it didn't collect the entire series of that Spider-Man volume, so you have to have some paperbacks to complete the set, but we're probably gonna make this an omnibus anyways someday, so I'll be waiting. And then we have, of course, the latest Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman, volumes 1 and 2 in the paperback editions. But now when they're ending this, I'm figuring that I'm gonna sell these paperbacks and just wait and hold on for a deluxe edition or omnibus, whatever they're gonna call it, so they complete this whole series. And speaking of omnibus, to our right, we of course have the start of my Spider-Man omnibus collection, starting off with the complete black costume saga. And we have that issue number 1 from Web of Spider-Man cover. That is a gorgeous cover. And then we move on to the David Michelini and Mark Bagley volumes 1 and 2, simply because they all have white spines and I tried to have an aesthetic pleasing of my collection. You'll see more of this on the next row. And here we have more Spider-Man books. We have books by J. Michael Straczynski, volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2 actually has a square type of binding to its back. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah. We call that the COVID variant because that's what we had to make do to get that volume out with another printer and everything. And then we have this one, Brand New Day Volume 1. The beginning of the Spidey Brain Trust. It's still in a shrink wrap. I'm not going to reread this before I have Volume 3 and Volume 2, obviously. The problem is I have already pre-ordered Volume 2 and Volume 3, and I just yesterday, before filming this, heard that the standard cover is going to be a wraparound cover. That is not going to have a white spine. This completely destroys this formula that I've tried to make. So volume 2 is gonna be a green spine, and then volume 3 maybe is gonna be a white spine again. So this is a lesson to tell yourself that what really matters is the material itself, and the spine and everything doesn't matter. It's what's inside. That's what I'm telling myself, to not go completely insane with this, at least. So then we have Nick Spencer Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is probably as far as I'm gonna go with the continuity of the Amazing Spider-Man title as of now, because at least he tried to repair some things. What I hear about the title right now just sounds damaged. And yeah, I like the first half of Nick Spencer's, and then the second one really tries. I can tell you that. Going on, we have The Avengers by Jonathan Hickman Omnibus Volume 1. Of course, the second volume is on the second bookshelf. This is something that I really should reread soon again. All of Jonathan Hickman's work. And you can't be lazy when you do that. You pretty much have to read everything all at once because otherwise you'll forget like super important stuff. But yeah, we'll see more of this on the next shelf. And here, as you can see, we have even more titles, mishmashed with different colored spines. I just had to make do with what I had and how the Marvel graphic novel design department distributes their designs. So we have The Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, Volume 2, furthest to the left. It's hard to reach the books now with the camera setup and everything. But then we have Daredevil by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, Volumes 1 and 2. A really good run of Daredevil, actually. It's not Brubaker, but it's very special. Then we have Daredevil by Charles Soule. It's okay. Young Avengers by Heimberg and Chang. This is something that they try to adapt right now, it feels like, with the Marvel TV shows. Of course, it's never going to be this one. It's never going to be the Children's Crusade. But it's really good, actually, and I really like Jim Chang's artwork. Then we have the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 1 by Brian Michael Bendis. And we do have Volume 2 out right now, but I actually told myself that I'll skip that volume. Because if you ask me, Volume 1 has the strongest and the best stories. So I have read the material that is in the second volume when I had them in the deluxe format, but then I went ahead and sold them because I never saw myself rereading those. So you can do that. Then we have Jonathan Hickman, Fantastic Four. This series I really should reread along with the Avengers Omnibus because I never did have the Jonathan Hickman marathon, so at least should have that once. And then we have the Spectacular Spider-Man by J.M. DeMatteis, Sal Buscema. I have really high expectations of this book. It's still shrink wrap because I haven't read it yet, and it's on my to-read list for this spring. So I'm getting to that after I finished my Amazing Spider-Man omnibus. And then we have Spider-Man by Chip Zdarsky. And I went ahead and went with the J. Jonah Jameson cover. And the stories are alright. Collected most of the Spectacular Spider-Man title in that one. And then we have Spider-Verse, Spider-Geddon Omnibus. I bought this because of the Spider-Verse event, of course. And the mapping of the omnibus is actually pretty okay for what they did with the event. The previous deluxe edition did not do a good work with that. And then we have my one and only title of 4, and this one is by Jason Aaron and Russell Dollarman and Asad Rivik. I went ahead with this cover of Mighty 4 in Volume 1, and then I think I have a regular cover for Volume 2. Yeah. But it's really nice, and it's the only 4 title that I see myself owning and needing to have, I mean, some kind of diversity with my Marvel titles. And then we have this one, Alias, some Jessica Jones. It's really grounded and good drama, I would say. And it's not too thick of a read. A quick 2-day read, maybe. And yeah, it's by Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos. Really good. And then we have my 2 only X-Men titles. The Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday, and The New X-Men by Grant Morrison. And yeah, John Cassaday in his day, really good artist. And The New X-Men by Grant Morrison, I reread that maybe once every 5 years, like so many other titles. And with that, you get a new appreciation for the stories within, I think. And let's move on to the next shelf row with even more Marvel omnibus. And here we begin with the dark omnibus spines, I guess. And we start off with the Captain America omnibus, volumes 1 to 5, I would like to say, but they each have one individual title. But very little spoilery, but I mean, these are now almost 25-year-old stories almost. So, yeah, the entirety of Ed Brubaker's Captain America. It's the only Captain America that I find essential for my collection, so I have those. And then we have, of course, the Daredevil books, which has grown quite a lot through the years. We have a Frank Miller collection and the companion. The recent edition was the Daredevil by Nocenti, Volume 1, waiting for Volume 2 to come out this summer. And then we have Marvel Knights by Yoki, and then the magnum opus that is Daredevil by Michael Bendis. It's the best. Nothing's gonna beat this. Of course, a good second one is Ed Brubaker's Daredevil, followed by Shadowland. It's an okay event. It's the tie-ins that's the troublemaker for that one. And then we have Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky. I think I gave Volume 1 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. I mean, that was really good. Volume 2, still good, but it's not as strong. And then we have Star Wars titles. Of course, Marvel has a lot of Star Wars titles, but the only one that I find myself reaching for is the Darth Vader ones. So I think this one was still printed when... Oh no, they're both under the Marvel headline. I was thinking about this story if this was by Dark Horse originally, but no, they're both when Marvel had the license. And then we have Hulk, Planet Hulk, my one and only Hulk omnibus. I did have World War Hulk historically back in the day, but it was only good for one read. But this one I've read several times, and sometimes all in one day actually, because it's not as thick. So yeah, really good. And then last but not least, for this shelf row, the Ultimates Omnibus. Collecting Ultimates Volume 1 and 2, that's really only the only Ultimates you'll need also. It has quite some outdated references, but I think the story still holds. And moving on, now we're gonna see much more Spider-Man. And as you can see, we have a whole shelf full of Spider-Man, almost entirely built out of Ultimate Spider-Man, because we have Volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, spoiler, the death of Spider-Man. And I think I'll stick with this one instead of ever picking up Volume 5 that they recently released. And then I have the first volume of Miles Morales, The Ultimate Spider-Man, which follows the original Peter Parker title. And I mean, he has more collected omnibus. I had the volume following this one, but the stories weren't as strong, and I really feel that this was Bendis' highlight of Miles. And then we go into the regular 616 universe again with Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Volume 1. And here, as you can see, the entire shelf is packed with Amazing Spider-Man material, all the way back to Stan Lee, Steve Ditko in Volume 1, the John Romita, and John Romita again, John Buscema, Gary Conway, and currently reading the Wolfman in Volume 6. There's going to be a 7th volume, and that is going to bridge the material between Volume 6 and Roger Stern. I'm very happy to have that Roger Stern now, actually. One of my first Spider-Man omnibus. going back 13 years now almost. And then we have Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane. Reread this so many times. And Eric Larson, David McElhaney. And then we jump a bit because I have my order of my books all the way up to Clone Saga, volumes 1 and 2, and as well as Ben Reilly, volume 1 and 2. And then it's a big jump between the Ben Reilly saga all up into the Spider-Man, or the Superior Spider-Man volume 1, which I'm probably just gonna stick with volume 1 because I've never read the material in volume 2, and I think the strongest Superior Spider-Man issues really are in this one. Now we move on to the DC shelf. And here we start with the DC shelf, and it is the most packed shelf that I have because I have a lot more omnibus and a lot more deluxe editions. At least I think I have more, or they're just thicker editions. But we start off, of course, with Batman books. We have Under the Red Hood, deluxe edition, and Batman Two-Face, Face to Face. And then we have the Batman Rebirth by Tom King, volumes 1 to 6, as well as the Flashpoint event button. And some of this is collected within the first omnibus volume by Tom King, but I'm still hanging on to these just because it took me so damn long to collect them all. So until I see a solicit for volume 3 of the Tom King Batman omnibus, I won't sell these off. I think I want to reread it actually in the deluxe editions one more time before doing so. Then we have another Grant Morrison classic, and Dave McKean on the artwork, Batman Arkham Asylum. And then we have Green Arrow by Jeff Lemire, which is also signed by Jeff Lemire. Then we have Identity Crisis, The Justice League of America by Brad Meltzer. I really hope that they just make an omnibus out of this series instead of just pushing out this one volume and then never getting back to it. So probably gonna sell this one in the future, hoping that they'll print an omnibus of it. Then we have Mr. Miracle by Tom King. Just as good as his Vision miniseries. This did have an absolute edition come out, but I'm good with the deluxe edition. Then we have another Grant Morrison book, We Free, by Grant Morrison, as I said, and Frank Quitely. It's a nice 3-issue miniseries. It has a foreword by James Gunn, which, of course, this is one of the inspirations for his Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie with Rocket, of course. Then we have some standard size Batman books. The Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul. This book really just works as a sort of compendium, or just to complete the story within the Batman by Grant Morrison Omnibus Volume 1. So I have this to have the complete story, because they only included Grant Morrison's and took out all the Paul Dini issues. And then we have the best work on Batman by Scott Snyder. It's not. The Court of Owls, it's not. Absolute Batman, it is. Till this day, still Batman Black Mirror. This story is really something I should have gone back to by Halloween. It's a really good story, and Dick Grayson actually having the mantle at the time. Another standard edition by Tom King, Batman and Catwoman, and this one also features the Phantasm coming back into Batman's life and making that character canon once again, because I don't think it has ever appeared in another Batman title. And then we have Batman The Dark Knight Master Race, Frank Miller, and Brian Azzarello, and Eddie Kubert, Klaus Janson, a lot of big names on it. But having reread this, I think that I'm actually done with this one. So I think that's the last time you'll see that book in this collection. Just rereading The Dark Knight Returns, I mean, it never should have gotten a sequel in the first place. That's how I see it now. And then we have the Batman Earth 1 series by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Really should get back into this one. Nice original graphic novel series and a different universe and all of that. A new book for this year, The Riddler, Year 1, based of course on the Riddler from the Matt Reeves, The Batman, and it's written by Paul Dano, the actor that played the Riddler in the movie. And I really like this. I really like this. Issue number 4 really stands out, and it's probably a great divider on whether you like this series or not. But as I said earlier, whatever material that can help me get into this universe and show me more, I'm all in for it. And then we have The Flash Rebirth by Jeff Johns. And then, yeah, that guy. I mean, my very first Flash story. And it's a really good introduction to all the other Flash characters. There's a lot of legacy within these 6 issues. But it really got me interested in Barry Allen and Flash. And then we start off with our omnibus. And I wouldn't necessarily have this Action Comics omnibus right here because I have other Superman omnibus. This is just how everything would fit the best on the shelf for right now. But we have Superman Action Comics by Dan Jurgens, Volume 1, Volume 2. I'm waiting for that. I don't think I'm going to pre-order any DC books now because they usually stay in print. But I'm definitely getting it as soon as possible. And then we start off with the Batman omnibus. First off is Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. It has the entire trilogy, Batman trilogy that they made originally, and When in Rome with Catwoman. And then we jump straight into the Road to No Man's Land and the No Man's Land Omnibus Volume 1. And then we continue on to the next row. And on this shelf row, as you can see, we continue with the Batman No Man's Land Omnibus Volume 2. And then some new editions. I don't think I had these last time. Batman Murderer Turned Fugitive Omnibus. Or maybe I had this one. But this one was definitely new. Batman War Games. Finally have that. Reread it. It's okay. It's still okay in my mind. And I'm sort of a completionist when it comes to the Batman omnibus, but I don't buy everything. But it's still good for the main canon. And then we have Batman by Grant Morrison, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Volume 1 is mainly Batman issues. Volume 2 is mainly Batman and Robin issues. And Volume 3 is basically Batman Incorporated. Yeah, I used to have Grant Morrison so many editions, the absolutes and so forth, but the omnibus edition, I'm really glad that they made the decision to release it in that format for its completion's sake. Probably one of the Batman stories that I've reread the most is definitely the material collected within the first 2 volumes. And we have more Batman on the next row. And here we have, of course, more Batman titles, but we also start to delve into some other DC characters. First off, we have Batman by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. A phenomenal run and great stories within. But of course, the main attraction for the New 52 was always the Scott Snyder run within Volume 1 and 2 here. And then The unofficial third volume, I would say it, is the Batman Eternal omnibus, which then bridges onto the Batman and Robin Eternal omnibus. And then later on, that dwells into the Rebirth era, that is the Tom King Omnibus Volume 1. So I do have the first volume, but as I said, I want to see Volume 2 come out and a solicit for Volume 3 before I let go of my deluxe editions. And then we have the greatest Batman ever, probably, or the greatest Bat family stories ever. That is The Rise and the Fall of the Batman Omnibus by James Tynion IV. This is his magnum opus. This is why I hesitated at first on actually giving in and buying his Batman main title omnibus, Volume 1. So I have this. Volume 2 is pre-ordered, but I still have my doubts. I don't think that this could ever top that. But I still bought it because I'm interested in Batman, if you noticed. And then we have Batgirl by Gail Simone, the New 52 run. This is always nice to go back to. Whenever I reread my Batman New 52 material, I also reread the Batgirl ones, along with the crossover with Death of the Family, and all of that. And then we have another Gail Simone omnibus, finally, the Birds of Prey omnibus, Volume 1. Volume 2 is solicited, and I'm not going to pre-order it. I don't think I have to, but I'm definitely buying it as soon as it is available. And then last but not least, for our Bat-centric titles, we have Gotham Central, which is, for a lot of people, the main recommendations when it comes to people getting into superhero comics. But, I mean, if you want to introduce DC, but not in a silly costume way, you go with Gotham Central. And of course, with Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka, you can't go wrong. And then last but not least for this shelf, we have the first 1, 2, and 3rd volume of The Flash by Jeff Johns. And these are the regular Flash omnibus, so they don't have as much material as the later printings of The Flash by Jeff Johns. So I think that volume 1 and 2 actually they combined into one omnibus. So the 3rd one has much later work, but I'm very satisfied with these. So let's move on to the final shelf row of DC books. And so we have come to the final shelf row of my DC omnibus. So here we have Green Lantern by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason, volumes 1 and 2. We have the Green Lantern trilogy by Jeff Johns, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Also followed by his JSA title with volumes 1, 2, and 3. And then Teen Titans, which is probably the biggest book that I have in my entire collection. And not shy thereafter, the Infinite Crisis omnibus by Jeff Johns, at least in the main title series. Infinite Crisis is probably, till this day, the best event that DC has ever made. And next to that is probably Blackest Night. And yeah, it's all good. I love these stories. I can never see myself part, especially not with JSA and the Green Lantern ones. Those are just phenomenal. And yeah, we'll see more of these kind of stories on the next shelf row or next bookcase. And as I think I mentioned earlier, my DC omnibus is a lot more thicker than the Marvel omnibus, so I don't necessarily have more of them, but they take up a lot of space, as you can see by this cube. I mean, it only fits 5 books. It has Hawkman Omnibus Volume 1. So I don't think they ever really planned a Volume 2. It doesn't feel like it. Never came out. Or it never sold as good as they wanted to. But I really like these Hawkman stories. And if they were ever to publish a Volume 2, I would buy it. And then we have 52 Omnibus. This follows the Infinite Crisis event. Then we have Final Crisis, 10th Anniversary Omnibus Edition. I think there's a 15th Anniversary Edition even. And Blackest Night, 10th Anniversary Omnibus has almost all of the tie-ins. At least it has the ones that counts and really matters for the titles that I've read. And then, of course, the follow-up event, Brightest Day. It was never as good or as big as an event as Blackest Night, but it's still okay. Now let's move on to the final bookcase and shelf. And here we are on the final shelf row with DC titles as well as delving into some Vertigo titles. Furthest to the left is Aquaman by Jeff Johns, New 52 title, followed by the Justice League Volume 1 and 2 of the New 52, also a Jeff Johns title, and a really good read at that. Really enjoy every time I reread this series. It is probably, if you would ever read any Justice League, I think I actually would recommend these. And then we have Superman by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. Man, I really have a lot of books with that team now. And yeah, it's just a great, wholesome story. And then we have Super Sons by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. I love this team. I love this book. They've made 1 or 2 more books called the expanded edition after this one. But yeah, I should settle for this. I'm not going to expand each and every time they make another miniseries of the Super Sons. But of course, then again, the Super Sons has kind of split up ever since they aged up Jonathan, which is a shame. And then we have a Vertigo title, but it's still a DC hero, but it is Grant Morrison's Animal Man. If you ever heard anyone talk about Animal Man and why you would pick it up, I say go for it. It's not just a superhero story. It has the sort of Grant Morrison typical kind of exploring the mind type of story as well. But I really like it, and I've reread it several times now in different editions. And then we have He-Man, the Masters of the Universe Omnibus. This is a thick boy. It's almost 1,500 pages, I believe, and it has DC's own canon He-Man stories within him, and it's really good. It's really good. It has collected a few older He-Man issues as well. I've never reread those in this one, but the main story itself, it reminds me a lot of what Kevin Smith is doing with his Netflix series, which I actually find quite okay. And then we go into our last few titles here. Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, volumes 1 and 2. This is the best work by Ennis, and I took with me this volume to Comic-Con and had him sign the first volume, as you can see here. So yeah, now it's mine forever. And I recently reread Scalped, volumes 1 and 2. Really great stuff. And it only took me like a week, it feels like. It's so good. It's so good. And then last but not least, let's see if I can grab the volume here. It is Brian K. Vaughan's Y the Last Man. Also something that always makes me cry whenever I reread it. So there you have it, folks. So that's it. That's the update for how the collection looks like now for the beginning of 2026. Thank you so much for hanging in there for this over an hour long of a video. It actually took me twice to record this just because I mixed up with the microphone and everything, but stuff like that happens, and I really wanted to get this video out for you guys. And if you're interested in following how the development of this collection goes, you can subscribe to the channel. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Goodreads. Links are down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a happy new year, and hope I'll see you next time. Bye bye.